firstly, thank you very much to Rajesh. We met last summer. We held in the UK a Super Angel Summit around the Olympics, and Rajesh and Ganesh came along, and we had a great time, and we committed to doing some stuff together. So I'm just really happy that I'm here now, and we're doing some stuff and sharing some knowledge about our ecosystems. So I thought what I'd do is speak a little bit about where we've been with London, where we've come from, kind of where we are now, and then move on to where we need to sort of think about going forward. So I think the first thing to talk about really is why London, and as Harj was talking about, a global city, a bit like New York, which is a fun place to live and work, and is an important player in industries such as finance, such as fashion, such as advertising. So it was kind of quite obvious that it was going to become an interesting place where entrepreneurs would come out of, either of these companies or be attracted. So, and also obviously a lot of the corporate headquarters that, of these, that are based there, and of course which, potential customers for these startups. So there's a number of reasons why. Now, we also had, over the last few years, and really starting with lastminute.com, some quite significant exits. So, there's only an exit market there. It's not as prevalent as we'd like, but there's been some big deals, and of course Mendeley and Sumley being two this year, which have come out. So, the issue though was that although we had these exits and it made sense to for it to sort of become a startup hub for a number of reasons we talked about. There were some significant shortcomings, and interesting what Harj said about, in 2007, he had to move his company to the Valley because there just wasn't the ecosystem in the UK to support his company. And, this is kind of borne out in some of the data. So, in 2007, there was one incubator in London. There were 15 tech companies based in East London, which has now sort of become Tech City, which I'll come on to. And there are about 500 applications to CCAMP, which is the leading accelerator in Europe, throughout 2007. This had creeped up a little bit by 2010, where there was about 100 companies. And it was at that stage in 2010 when also we had a new government. David Cameron came in, and he had some very smart advisors around him, led by a guy called Rohan Silva, who some of you may have met, very, very forward-thinking, extremely bright young guy that actually happened to live in Shoreditch, this area of East London, and knew the entrepreneurs around there and realized that something was happening and wanted to find out, well, how can we support this? And so, as I say, there's this area of Tech City which the government called, named something to give it a bit of a brand and some focus. And so within this space between 2010, the government coming in, and 2013, what we've seen is through the government wanting to push a lot of, well, wanting to start this experiment of understanding whether by supporting sort of entrepreneurs and then listening to them and putting in, friendly policies, whether we could, create a hotbed of innovation. And as you'll see from the data, with the sort of, the growth of London, we've now got over 30 co-working spaces and accelerators. It's over 1,300 tech companies. That was in January. I think there's over 1,500 now, and that's increasing really quite quickly. Over 2,000 startups applied to CCAMP. We've also had Techstars set up their first international operation in the UK. Very interesting what Harj said as well about immigration, which I'll come on to in a minute. That was the main reason why Techstars came to London, because we had this entrepreneur's visa. It's incredibly easy to, if you've got £50,000, you can come and get an entrepreneur's visa in the UK. Similar sort of thing for investors. So they've come on board as well. And obviously you'll see the uplift in office space as major corporates in the tech space have moved in. There's a 39% increase now, as you'll see there. So, now, when I talk about, how did this happen, and I was talking about the government sort of putting some policies around it, I thought I'd sort of break it down into what we're trying to do here. We wanted to focus, obviously, on sort of entrepreneur-friendly policies, so capital gains tax up to the first 10 million, the entrepreneurs visa, which I talk about, which we see as a big competitive advantage, and which we're going to be making, one, even more generous, and two, pushing a lot harder and with VCs. So, we're really trying to take a step ahead of the competition there. Also for companies, we're looking at R&D tax credit to make it much cheaper to hire engineers, which we've seen some success with from outside of the EU. And then for investors, there are various schemes to basically protect all of your money from investing in startups. Again, you've got to be a UK resident for those EIS schemes, but they're kind of quite popular. And then a couple of other things the government's doing now is to increase the allocation of government data, which can be accessed, which is, we're seeing a lot of big data plays now coming about because of this sort of open data agenda, and also accessing procurement contracts which used to be closed. And again, we're trying to push that further. So I suppose, the big question where I come to is London sort of has moved in an ecosystem which has become more established, a bit like New York. New York we probably think is a bit further along the chain down the line than London, but we see a sort of similar growth rate. And so kind of where next, how do we continue to support this? Well, I think the first one is access to capital. I lead a team called the Venture Capital Unit, which was set up to engage with investors around the world, primarily Series A VCs, engage them in the opportunities in the UK as the ecosystem develops, and there's many more opportunities. There's a fair amount of angel capital going in, and we'd obviously like these companies to feel as though they don't just can start a company in the UK, but they can also think about growing it growing it within Europe and then accessing other markets. So that's the first thing to do. So we're engaging with VCs, we're engaging with corporates, both as customers, but also as investors, and super angel networks, which again, absolutely vital for any maturing ecosystem. Because obviously these sophisticated investors bring with them the networks and the mentorship, which are vital for companies to make it to the next level. Talking about, or rather, lining up with what Haj was saying, continuing to make entrepreneurism kind of more mainstream. We're certainly seeing a number of programs now with university graduates. For instance, there's a program called Entrepreneur First. If you ever come to London, I'll introduce you to them. They're unbelievable. They are about attracting the best and brightest graduates from Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial, London School of Economics, and providing them with this amazing sort of package of support, meeting with companies, investors, you name it, Indexer Ventures, the smartest VCs in Europe. They're fully behind it and supportive. We've got Silicon Valley Bank behind it. And what we're seeing is more of these graduates that would used to go and work for Goldman Sachs or used to go and work for one of the big consultancy firms like McKinsey, they're actually now wanting to become entrepreneurs because it's become more popular. As Haj said, there's the Facebook films out there, and it's becoming more socially accepted. So Entrepreneur First, they had 5 applications last year when they started. 1 minute. Thank you, I'll tie up quickly. They had 500 applications, 5 people that were accepted out of the 35, got the top degrees in their year from either Oxford or Cambridge. This year, the next group is over 1,000. They're the second biggest recruiter of computer science graduates from Cambridge. This is all very encouraging, and we hope it continues. I think 2 final points. A more sustainable exit market is very important as we're talking about this sort of flow of cash that goes around from entrepreneurs. They have exits and then they become angels. Really important that continues. That's kind of ensuring the public markets work better, but also the trade sales, etc. I can talk a bit more about that, but I realize I'm running out of time. And the final thing, I think, as London matures as an ecosystem, just like New York did, is you've got to think about lining up with emerging tech ecosystems. So we're incredibly interested, and this is why Rajesh and I stay in touch and want to do more together, is because India, massive opportunities here, China, Brazil, and we need to be thinking about joining up these ecosystems so they can support each other much better, because these are global companies, they need global networks, they need global investors. So on that note, I shall finish. Thank you very much.